Welcome back to the Real Estate Reserve Podcast. Jason Bale and Hard Money Bankers, co-host Ian Horowitz, Equity Warehouse. We are talking recap from the recent LFG Mastermind that Ian hosted. I did not attend, but I am very curious to learn and hear more about what went on, some key takeaways Ian had. We're hosting our mastermind here coming up in the next month. So it's mastermind season, I suppose, right? Mastermind season,
yeah, well,
which is twice a year in our world.
Well, you got to do it twice a year. I thought I was going to go to Florida and then come back and then be in this beautiful warm weather here in the Mid-Atlantic. And once again, it's cold. So I want to know where spring is. Maybe by the time this episode comes out, it'll be warm. But yeah, dude, we were down in Clearwater, Florida. John Farling and myself host the LFG Mastermind. We have a bunch of guys that are in it, and then we'll invite a few guests to see if they want to join. And we have about 20 guys that'll get together in a room, and we sit down and we hang out. And this year was very interesting because we did something a little more unique. Normally a mastermind, Jason, I don't know how yours is, but you guys usually just set up a hot seat. You do that. And the problem with the hot seats is what? Everybody gets up there. Oh, my problem's X. And then everybody just co-signs the same problem. So they don't need to be as vulnerable. And then by the end, it's like, well, I've already heard this problem 8 different times. Use the solution that we told the first guy. So this year we brought in a RevOps coach. He does, what does he do? Not traction, EOS. And, he went through a lot of interesting things that were really resonating. And I thought there was a lot of good takeaways that are really relevant in all of our businesses right now that I think we could all use. Right. And a lot of stuff that we've talked about over the past few months, who, not how, and buy back your time and all those things, and going through how he implements them in our business. There was a really cool slide, and I'm going to try to pull it up real quick while we're here. And if Jason can carry the conversation.
I mean, here's the thing. If you're not going to be vulnerable, what's the point of freaking going?
Well, dude.
That's the point. I mean, when we run our group, and our upcoming one is going to have more people than normal, but I couldn't say no to a few people that I didn't think were going to come, and but we wanted them there. So typically when we run our group, we usually have it set up where we're doing some education, of what we're doing, live stuff of what we're seeing, and we're going to have to cut some of those short to make sure everyone has the opportunity. But I strategically put people in place, the most vulnerable people in place, because just especially, ones that have been in the group for a long time and not newer members. And our group's been going on for 5 years. So I've, know a lot of, backstories of what's going on with them, because they got to be honest. And I want them to go up there and be like, hey, listen, I've got a big business, but I still have real big challenges. And these are the challenges. And the challenges from, semi-annually, year to year are different as there's growth. But that being said, I want them to be honest with it. And if they're not going to be they're just not going to be a good fit for the group. And I get it. Some people have the same challenges. I'm having a hard time finding deals. I'm having a hard time finding money. But it gets deeper than that. Those are broad challenges. You got to get deeper into some of that stuff. So I think that's important. And I challenge anybody who's in a group, and it could be a small group, a big group, but 2 things have to occur. Number one, it's got to be a group that's going to help level you up and hold you accountable. And it's a group that, listen, you're going to be outside the freaking box. And that word vulnerable is a big word. If you're not comfortable, sharing stuff like that with people, it might not be the best group for you, because I think that's important to help push you outside the box to the next level.
Yeah, no, that's 100% right. And the other thing is if you're not going to be vulnerable getting up and sharing, then when the information that's given to you, you're not going to be vulnerable enough to take it and want to work through it, right? And then one of the interesting things that we discussed was, what's the difference between a visionary, an implementer, and an executor, right? And it doesn't seem relevant early on in your business. As you start to grow, you really see the different people and how they operate inside your business and where they fit, right? I'm definitely a visionary. That's 100%. I'm also an executor, but I'm an executor to a point. I'm not the guy to go out and execute a plan. I'm more of a wrecking ball, right? I can go in there. I have a vision. I want to do this. That's done. but to then put a system and process in place that's rinse and repeatable, I think that's hard. And, I know we all know how to do our business, but then there is like, it was just interesting to hear about like, it's like, oh, well, just get your employee to document. That's what everybody says at all these masterminds. Just get your employee to document what they do every day. And it's like, yeah, that sounds good, but that's not necessarily how it's going to take place. And it's not always going to happen. And you need to be able to work through that. And he had this really good slide, and I can't find it, but it was, they looked at a pit crew. They looked at a Formula One car racing crew, and you had, you had your guy that was like the GM, right? He's the visionary. You have your driver, who's the executor, but then the guy in the middle is the guy that runs the whole crew. He's overseeing, the pit boss, essentially. He's making sure everything's being implemented properly. And that slide really resonated with me, just, thinking, because I'm probably not the best person to document processes and how to do it. And I think a lot of us in our businesses probably aren't. And it's really painstaking. And that's why, because I know Jason says the same thing, so I'll call him out, but it's like, fuck it, I'll just do it myself. But the reason we say that is just because it's not our best skill set to sit there and try to type up an SOP on how to do something. And not all the time does every piece of your business need a SOP either, right?
No doubt. I agree. So what was some key takeaways or solutions for some of that stuff, if that was something that was important, for you inside the business or inside your business?
Yeah, one of the takeaways is, being able to, really just make enough revenue to have that person. The other thing is, who around you can you surround yourself with and identify to take that process on? Like what employees inside your business are raising their hand and saying, hey, I'm looking for more work. Okay, well, they're probably a supportive type. We talked a lot about dispersonality and like identifying the right personality types to implement this. Have you ever heard of a book called Working Genius? I got to download it. I haven't gotten through it. I got a 9-hour drive tomorrow, so I'll probably knock it out tomorrow. But, just again, more personality types of like who to find, who to hire, who to get through on that. And ultimately you just need to find a way to do it, right? Because if you want to build yourself out of this business and become like, quote unquote, the investor, and it's not what everybody wants. It sounds good on paper and you should probably be striving to do it. But in the same sense, it might not be your highest and top priority, and the right person will come along at the right time to get it done, So,
yeah, I mean, it depends. It also depends on how long you've been in business, what you want out of your business, what the ultimate goal is with things. I mean, we talked the other day, since you've been back, and you were like, yeah, I think, and I agree with you on this. I think the executive assistant isn't the right name of the person I want. I think it's more of a chief of staff. And I was like, you're right. I agree with that. That is a good person because, not everybody just wants to like hire a CEO for their own company or a president of their own company and just take a back seat and be like, oh, hey, let this thing run itself. But at the same time, it's challenging to have, even a high level assistant, an executive assistant to run things, on your behalf, because there's still some direction and some order that has to be in place. I've tried different things inside our business as well of what makes the most sense. And I think a chief of staff is somebody that is powerful, but, kind of even above like a COO type of situation. And, they're given projects with little direction of, hey, like start running this particular thing. And, a lot of it comes with a price tag. That's a 6-figure position.
Yeah. No, chief of staff, that was definitely a big takeaway for me, and I never really thought about this is like, you have an assistant, right? They're just doing tasks. You have this executive assistant and, they're taking on tasks. They're not always answering on your behalf. They're doing a lot of your scheduling. They're doing a lot of things for you, but they don't have the autonomy to act on your behalf. And then when he said, most people, even though you say you want an executive assistant, what you really want is a chief of staff. And I'm like, well, what's the difference? He's like, well, a chief of staff is someone who goes out and acts on your behalf that represents you in a meeting. So if you have a meeting, they sit down, they have the ability to make that decision on your behalf 99% of the time. And I'm like, well, shit, that's like the end all be all in my
Here's the other thing though,
Yeah.
that I would challenge you, and I would challenge most people that are like, oh shit, that's really what I need, is you probably think you need some of that stuff, but, and I'm not saying by all means like you shouldn't go in that direction, but like imagine if you had that person right now full time, like it would be hard to keep them busy.
No, exactly. I'm
And
literally thinking the same thing. It's
yeah,
like,
and it's like, hey, like this would be great, but like, I was thinking recently, and I shared this with you as well, we look to hire kind of an executive assistant and, stateside executive assistant, somebody local, or not somebody local, somebody virtual, but somebody that like was higher level, higher paid, someone to help with a lot of kind of tasks. And like, we created a system around it of like, cool, how are we going to load them up with projects? How are we going to communicate? We created what I think is a pretty good system. And like, there wasn't many things. It's like the one thing that kind of drives you the most crazy, which maybe not, it doesn't even take that much time. You offload that. Then everything else, it's like, this isn't a big deal anymore because I don't have to focus or worry about this. And some of the stuff in our world was content related stuff because, I like doing content. I love doing content, but that's where it ends. I want to get off camera and then just be done and have everything else kind of run itself. And we're able to kind of find people to help on that component, which didn't take that much time, but like because a lot of this stuff isn't time. It's mind. It's whatever that, I can't even think of the right word.
It takes a mind.
It takes mind space. And, even if it takes, 30 minutes of keystroke time, which isn't a ton of time, it could take hours of, staying focused, time. So
here's one that I did, and I did this before our mastermind. I turned the email notifications off on my phone. And I don't think how much noise people realize comes through on the email. And that's actually been a big one. I still have email on my phone. I'm not that insane, but I check it on my terms when I'm ready. Okay, I got 5 minutes to sit down and check it. Great. Sometimes when you're like bored out of your mind, you're checking it every 2 seconds, but I was doing that anyway and getting notifications. So like I've turned that off to be, I don't want to say more present, but just like not like, it's they're mind interruptions every time that something happens, right? I'm talking to you. I see my notification go off on my phone. I'm looking down, right? Well, right now, the only thing I can see, I've only been watching one thing is Shopify notifications as of right now as we micromanage and nurse this company through is really the only thing that I've been watching. But other than that, like I've turned off all that. I don't want the interruptions. I still have my text notifications on. There's probably a world that I should probably turn them off too. But again, there's not a need to. So I think you need to figure out what noise needs to be removed out of your life first, then get the administrative assistant and then promote that person throughout. Because I think ultimately what you were getting at is, you want a chief of staff, but there's not a lot to do. But a lot of what you think you have to do is just noise. There's not actually things that you need to do. They're just interrupting you all the time,
Yeah, I mean, you also need to have an action plan on, okay, well, after that's removed, what are you going to do to stay focused on? And are you really going to do some of that stuff?
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to think about. It's something to think about. I mean, it also depends on the type of business you're in, right? Like, I'm present on my emails on a regular basis because deals are coming in on a regular basis. I'm like, part of our business is massive marketing machine in order to get deal flow that comes in, every minute, every hour. And even if I don't have to run that deal, it's pretty easy to just forward it to somebody else. And, could somebody do that? But like, that's part of the business that I like and I want to be involved in. So to me, that doesn't need to, it doesn't need to, roll out to somebody else. So I think it just depends on who you are and the type of space that you're in and what you're interested in doing and what you're not interested in doing. I think most real estate investors tend to be deal junkies to begin with. So, kind of analyzing, reviewing, looking at deals. I also think that, and this is kind of off topic, but like most people spend and waste time on a lot of things that they shouldn't. Right. So like they're just spending, they're focusing times on other things that they shouldn't. Like, I'm not going to go try to spend an hour to rework a deal that's never going to work to begin with. Right. Like, it's a waste of time. And I think some people will do that. Like, it's like, oh, hey, I have one real estate investment deal to analyze per day. And, you know, I got to figure out the way that I can make it work. And it's like, hey, well, why don't you go focus on trying to find more opportunities so you can look at 10 deals a day instead of one. And then, you know, you actually could have it. You know, you have, you know, you don't have to waste time on reviewing something that's just inevitable, not gonna happen. What were other key takeaways that you think some other folks in the group got? That
I think the key takeaway, I mean, I think this every time I leave one of these. I know one takeaway is that, like, everyone's going through the same shit, whether they lead you to believe on or not. Like, everybody's got problems, everybody's got successes, everybody's got value. You know, things are tough out there right now, in people's opinion. You know, a lot of people are worried about where deal flow and financing is coming through, which always surprises me. You know, especially being in the group that we're in, it's just interesting. But also, you know, a lot of people are putting their guard down and really getting transparent of, like, where they stand, what's their goals. The other big takeaways, you know, I had one guy was listening to this RevOps coach who came in, Ian Bishop, and he literally reworked his whole business in sitting there the whole time listening to him. He spent the whole time rebuilding his whole business, which was awesome to see, and realizing that he needs to get hyper focused on one thing rather than working on a ton of things. Dan Smith, who I've had here on the show with us, we've interviewed him. It's been good to watch him clean up his portfolio and get where he wants to be. So overall, I would just say I think a lot of people are using this, like, quote unquote downtime to clean up your business and move forward, right? And dump what you don't want and pick up what you want, you know?
Yeah, but isn't the real answer to be, like, start focusing more on marketing? Because there's deals that are coming up, you know, and they might not fully be ready yet, but, like, start planting those seeds more and more now. You know, acquisition costs are cheaper than they were in the past. Social media ads are cheaper than they were in the past.
So let me ask you this, and I'd be interested, because I know our groups are about the same age, is, like, as you see the maturity of your group grow, do you notice guys not, like, necessarily wanting to back off, but, like, they're more particular in what they like? You see the maturity level come with it, right? Like, and I know I've talked about this just on the properties that we're buying. You know, I've seen a lot more maturity inside the group of being like, well, back in the day, I would have bought that. I would have never thought twice about it, as to, like, well, it doesn't meet these metrics. I don't want to mess up my time, this, that, and the other thing, blah, 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 blah. Like, it makes a lot of sense, you know?
Yeah, but they're hyper focused on finding more opportunities, knowing that, like, that deal that they did in the past, that deal probably wasn't all that good. I need to do something better. And they're mature enough to know, like, hey, the market helped that deal. I mean, there's endless deal. If you've been in this game long enough, there's endless deals that you look back and be like, and if you're smart about it, be like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that deal, but it worked out great. That was a big part of our rental portfolio, right? Like, they worked out great, but, like, the market helped a lot of those things. And, you know, if that portfolio got rebuilt or went to buying stuff again, like, we would change things up, learning from that. And it was fortunate that some of that happened. And I think the smart people that have been in this space less than a decade, hopefully they've learned that. If they haven't, they're going to be learning very, 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 very soon. So, yeah, I mean, I think people are more mature, because maturity goes with education and it goes with time. So, yes, I do think that. But at the same time, like, they're figuring out ways to scale. And as people grow, they put new systems in place and better systems in place. So they have the ability to scale effortlessly, or a lot easier. And a lot of people in our group started out with 1 or 0 employees, and now they have employees. And it's like, hey, I've got a good team and a system in place, and I can handle more deals. Let's figure out a way that we can go buy more stuff. Lend more stuff, whatever.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. And I like watching that growth. I like everyone's trajectory. I like watching people sort it out in real time and figuring it out. And, you know, one thing we've been doing inside of our group, we have small mini groups, you know, so every 6 months we switch around who's in your mini group, and they meet every month. And it just keeps the continuity and keeps people engaged on what they're doing. And it's just been fun to watch and exciting to see people take the steps in growth. And I'll leave you with one thing because I got to hop off here in a second. But I was able to hop in the Gulf of America. It was the perfect temperature. Clearwater Beach is amazing. It is an awesome town if you've never been. It's the home spring training of the Orioles and the Phillies. And it's a really cool town, man. So you guys should definitely go check it out. And, if you're looking to join a mastermind, ours is invite only. But if you think you have what it takes to join the boys, I mean, we have one day I need to do this, the value of assets that are in the room, and everybody dresses horribly, which is amazing. And I love that. I just love that it's all sleeper dudes in there. And there's probably $1 billion worth of assets in our room. It's so cool to see. So I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I look forward to the next one. I think we're going to plan our next one in Austin, Texas in October. So we'll see you out there. And actually, I'm excited. I'm going to pop down to Jason's here next month. And I like popping my head in other ones and just see what's going on. So, but yeah, big takeaways, man. Keep doing deals. Keep grinding. See if you can have an administrative assistant fit into your operation and figure out where you fit in your operation. And I think it goes a long way. So,
yeah. And if you're not involved in a sphere of people that are going to help you level up your game, get involved, because that's important, and that doesn't change in life.
Yep. 100%. So guys, if you got any value out of this, please feel free to share the show. Normally we have a guest on here, but it's just Jason and I talking today, pouring our hearts out. So if you got any value out of it, go ahead, feel free to share it. That's the only time I'll ever ask you to do something for us. And we will catch you boys and girls on the next one.
Thanks for tuning in to the Real Estate Reserve podcast. Do us a favor and like, comment, and share our broadcast. It helps the algorithm and helps us spread the word too. Till next time, thank you for tuning in.